Picture this. A family gathered around a dinner table, laughter in the air, the smell of fresh bread, a warm light glowing through the windows. But just a few years later, that table sits empty. The bread is gone, the house is cold, and silence has replaced joy. This wasn't a scene from war. It was the Great Depression, a catastrophe that broke nations, crushed dreams, and nearly brought the world to its knees. But how did we go from jazz clubs and booming cities to soup lines and shattered lives? And how did we claw our way back? Stay with me, because this story could save us again someday.
From war to wonder.
After World War I ended in 1918, the world exhaled. America stood tall. Soldiers came home. Factories fired up. And for the first time, the average citizen believed life could only get better. New inventions filled homes: radios, vacuums, washing machines. Henry Ford's Model T changed transportation forever. A car wasn't a luxury, it was freedom. By 1927, America had become a modern miracle. But beneath the music and money, cracks had already begun to form.
Consumerism and credit.
The Roaring '20s were full of sparkle. Jazz filled the streets, women gained rights, city lights stayed on late, but much of it was built on credit, loans, installment plans, and borrowed dreams. People bought now and hoped they could pay later. It worked until it didn't.
The market euphoria.
The stock market skyrocketed. From 1921 to 1929, it multiplied 6 times. Everyone, teachers, farmers, janitors, became investors. But they weren't investing with savings. They borrowed, using margin, paying just a sliver up front and gambling the rest. Wall Street had become a casino, and most didn't realize the roulette wheel was already spinning out of control.
Cracks in the system.
By the late 1920s, trouble brewed. Factories overproduced. Europe, still recovering from war, bought less. Farm prices fell. But Wall Street ignored the signs. The market kept climbing, right off a cliff.
Black Thursday and Black Tuesday.
October 24th, 1929, Black Thursday. Panic gripped traders. Over 12 million shares were sold. Prices tumbled. 5 days later, Black Tuesday. 16 million shares traded hands. Billions vanished in hours. Fortunes were erased. Dreams destroyed. But the crash was just the beginning of something far worse.
Banking system collapse.
Back then, banks weren't like today. There was no insurance, no regulation. When people lost confidence, banks collapsed. One rumor could spark a run, crowds demanding their savings. And when the cash ran out, it was gone for good. Over 9,000 banks failed. People lost homes, farms, life savings. Not in months, but in minutes. This was no longer just a stock crash. It was an economic freefall.
Deflation and depression.
Money dried up, people hoarded cash, prices fell, which sounds good, until you realize wages collapsed and debts became impossible to repay. By 1933, unemployment soared to 25%. Entire towns were jobless. Despair became a daily ritual. And the Federal Reserve, paralyzed by outdated thinking, did nothing.
Hoover's mistakes and global collapse.
President Herbert Hoover tried to reassure the nation, but his policies made things worse. The Smoot-Hawley tariff raised taxes on imports. Other countries retaliated. Global trade collapsed by 66%. The world spiraled together, united by misery. And from that soil, extremism began to grow.
Human toll.
The Dust Bowl smothered farms in choking dust. Crops failed. Families fled their homes. Kids coughed in their sleep. Cities filled with the homeless, shanty towns, called Hoovervilles, spread. Bread lines stretched for blocks. Fathers walked miles for work they wouldn't find. This wasn't just an economic failure, it was a human tragedy.
Roosevelt and the New Deal.
In 1932, the nation was crumbling. Banks failing, families starving, hope fading. Then came a new voice, calm, confident, unshaken. Franklin Delano Roosevelt. His New Deal didn't promise magic. It promised action. And on his first day, he made it clear. Business as usual was over. He shut down every bank in the country. Auditors went in. Weak banks stayed closed. Strong ones reopened with a promise: your money is safe. For the first time, deposits were insured. Trust returned. Next, Roosevelt tackled Wall Street. The Securities and Exchange Commission was born to watch the markets, prevent manipulation, and protect the people. But perhaps his boldest move? Jobs. Roosevelt didn't wait for the private sector. He put Americans to work directly, building bridges, highways, parks, post offices, schools. Men and women earned more than a paycheck. They earned a purpose.
Social safety nets.
But Roosevelt understood something deeper. Relief wasn't enough. America needed protection, permanent protection. So he built something new, a safety net, Social Security, to ensure no elderly American would be abandoned. Minimum wage, to guarantee a fair day's pay. Unemployment insurance, so losing your job wouldn't mean losing your dignity. These weren't temporary solutions. They were structural changes designed to safeguard future generations, to make sure we'd never fall so far again.
World War II and final recovery.
Still, for all the progress, the New Deal didn't end the Great Depression. It stopped the free fall. It softened the suffering. But the full recovery, that came later, in the shadow of war. In 1941, as America armed itself for World War II, factories roared back to life. Production surged. Tanks, planes, ships. Millions were hired. Unemployment vanished.
Lessons that still matter.
So what did we learn? Speculation can destroy nations. Weak banks can sink entire systems. Isolationism backfires. And government action, when swift and focused, can save lives. But perhaps the biggest lesson: people need protection when they fall. Not pity, not punishment, protection. Because when safety nets disappear, when greed goes unchecked, when we forget these lessons, we open the door to collapse, and worse. The Great Depression wasn't just numbers on a chart. It was real people, real pain. But it was also a story of resilience, of how we adapted, changed, and grew. Roosevelt's New Deal, the wartime mobilization, and the lessons we carried forward, they remind us that even in our darkest hour, we are not powerless. If you found this story meaningful, if you believe history still has something to teach us, please like, share, and subscribe. It helps us tell more stories that matter. And more than that, it helps keep these lessons alive.